Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful Today channel. We won't let you fool us anymore. Finally, Ridge, Taylor and Brooke lose both. Taylor and Brooke realize Ridge's true face. Taylor crying is giving back the ring to Ridge. Do broken engagements cause exes to reconcile? Taylor discusses her honeymoon. Taylor Hayes and Ridge Forrester discuss their impending honeymoon. Ridge, Brooke Logan, and Eric Forrester began Wednesday's B&B show by talking with Katie Logan and Donna Logan Forrester at Forrester Creations. Donna and Katie were grateful as well, since Brooke commended Ridge for saving her life. In addition to being relieved that Ridge had saved Brooke, Eric said that it was a frightening sight to see. Brooke assumed he had to visit Taylor when Ridge made a suggestion that he had somewhere to be. Brooke was devastated after Ridge left, but Eric said Ridge simply needed a little more time to return to her. When Ridge arrived at the Forrester house, Kelly showed him the wedding gown she had drawn. Kelly was thrilled about the opportunity to be the flower girl at her grandparents' impending wedding. Kelly recommended Italy as a honeymoon destination, but Taylor was considering St. Thomas and told Kelly about its importance. As Taylor talked about the wedding preparations she had been completing, Ridge appeared uneasy. Ridge ended up speaking with Taylor alone, although he appeared more reserved and thoughtful than normal. Taylor persuaded Ridge to talk about Brooke's boat accident and realized how much the incident must have affected him. Ridge appeared to be about to say something to Taylor when Kelly cut him off to continue the conversation about the marriage ceremony. It is obvious that Ridge was under pressure to fulfill his commitment because of Kelly's excitement about the wedding. On Wednesday's B&B episode, Electra Forrester talked candidly with Will Spencer in the design office of Forrester Creations. Electra's desire for a slow-moving relationship with Will was explained as a result. Electra continued to reflect on the difficulties she had faced as a result of Remy Price's deepfakes. Will understood why Electra had some hang-ups in the bedroom and was prepared to wait for her. He arrived at the office with Nick Marone to express regret to Brooke for the boating mishap. Nick also acknowledged that he was sorry they couldn't complete their boat excursion because he had something special planned for that day. Nick left Brooke speechless when he revealed that he intended to pop the question in Italy and showed her the ring. Brooke declared her love for Nick after he declared his love for her. We'll keep you informed about any other romantic developments that may be in Nick's future since he won't receive the happily ever after he's hoping for with Brooke. Brooke is stuck. Since Brooke Logan will also feel trapped, let's discuss what's upcoming on B&B. Brooke can't force Ridge Forrester to give in to her feelings, even if she would want nothing more than to continue where they left off. Although Ridge is aware that Brooke is the woman he wants right now, his duty to Taylor Hayes continues to get in the way. Brooke will grow increasingly irritated the longer Ridge delays getting back together. When Brooke and Ridge could be living a happy, fulfilling life together, she will feel as though she is stuck pining for him. Ridge will be equally miserable since his intellect tells him to honor his engagement to Taylor, but his heart is pulling him back to Brooke. It's likely that Eric Forrester will continue to tell Ridge that Brooke is the ideal fit for him. For the time being, though, Ridge will continue with his preparations to marry Taylor. Naturally, temptation may arise at some points during the journey. Some secret kisses are conceivable because Brooke and Ridge aren't afraid to be alone together, especially since they had a kiss following Brooke's injury in Naples. Ridge Forrester, Brooke Logan, and Taylor Hayes on The Bold and the Beautiful serves as a potent microcosm of a complex romantic truth. A broken engagement, far from being a clean severance, can act as a powerful gravitational force, pulling former lovers back into each other's orbit with surprising, sometimes devastating, intensity, as evidenced by the palpable tension simmering beneath the surface of Ridge and Taylor's ostensibly joyful wedding planning, where discussions of St. Thomas honeymoons and flower girl dresses clash jarringly with the unresolved seismic shockwaves of Ridge's recent, life-saving intervention for Brooke, an event that didn't just rescue her from the watery abyss but also plunged Ridge headfirst back into the deep emotional currents of their shared history, forcing him to confront the raw, unextinguished embers of a connection that decades of marriages, betrayals, and yes, broken engagements have failed to permanently douse. Ridge's palpable discomfort during Taylor's enthusiastic detailing of their future, his quiet pensiveness that screamed louder than any protest, and his near confession halted only by Kelly's innocent interruption, were not merely signs of a man stressed by a recent trauma, they were the unmistakable tremors of a soul profoundly shaken back towards its foundational magnetic pull, Brooke. His heroic act on the boat transcended mere duty. It was an instinctive, primal response that bypassed his current commitment to Taylor, violently reopening the door to a past he had ostensibly closed, reminding him viscerally of the depth of his bond with Brooke, a bond forged and reforged through countless trials, separations, and yes, the shattered promises of engagements past. This phenomenon, the broken engagement acting as a boomerang rather than a full stop, thrives on several intertwined psychological and narrative threads. The inherent unfinished business that a broken engagement represents, a relationship halted abruptly mid-flow, leaving crucial emotional dialogues unsaid and profound questions unanswered, creating a persistent psychic itch that demands resolution. The powerful nostalgia and familiarity that exes represent, especially when contrasted with the daunting uncertainties of forging a new lifelong commitment, making the known pain of the past seem suddenly preferable to the unknown challenges of the future. The intense shared history and trauma that binds individuals like Ridge and Brooke, whose lives are an epic tapestry woven with triumphs, tragedies, betrayals, and rescues, creating an almost familial depth of understanding and a unique shorthand that new partners, however beloved, often struggle to penetrate, and the insidious sense of obligation and guilt that Ridge so clearly felt under Kelly's radiant, expectant gaze, the weight of familial expectation and the fear of disappointing his daughter becoming chains that bind him to a path he might intrinsically feel is wrong now, precisely because the broken engagement with Brooke didn't achieve the emotional closure required to move forward freely. Taylor's intuitive understanding of Ridge's turmoil regarding the boat incident highlights her awareness of this dangerous undercurrent. She knows the power Brooke holds over him, a power amplified, not diminished, by their fractured engagements. Meanwhile, Brooke's own vulnerability in the aftermath of the accident and Nick Marone's tragically mistimed proposal further fuels this gravitational pull. Nick's confession of his planned Italian proposal and declaration of love, while sincere, landed with a thud precisely because Brooke was emotionally raw and preoccupied with the man who had saved her, the man whose discomfort and distance she felt acutely even as he planned a honeymoon with another. Nick's impending heartbreak isn't just about Brooke rejecting him, it's about her being pulled back towards the unresolved epicenter of her romantic life, Ridge. Her reciprocated "I love you too" to Nick felt hollow, not because the affection isn't real, but because it existed in the immense shadow cast by Ridge's life-saving act and the tidal wave of history it unleashed. The broken engagements between Ridge and Brooke, and there have been several, were never truly endpoints. They were merely dramatic pauses, periods of reorganization where the fundamental attraction and connection went dormant but never died, waiting for a catalyst, like a near-death experience or the suffocating pressure of a new, perhaps premature, commitment, to reignite. Ridge's physical departure from Brooke at Forrester Creations, met with her visible despondency and Eric's hopeful platitudes about needing more time, underscores the shared, unspoken understanding that Ridge is caught in a vortex between duty and desire, between the promise made to Taylor and the undeniable pullback to Brooke. This push-pull dynamic is the essence of why broken engagements so often reel exes back in. The fracture creates a vacuum, an emotional debt, and the universe of the bold and the beautiful, much like real life in heightened form, abhors that vacuum, relentlessly creating scenarios, accidents, confessions, confrontations, moments of profound vulnerability, that demand the debt be paid, forcing individuals back to the scene of the romantic crime to either finally achieve closure or succumb once more to the powerful, complicated, and often destructive bond that the broken engagement failed to sever. The St. Thomas honeymoon plans, therefore, hang precariously in the balance, not merely threatened by external scheming, but by the immense, unresolved gravitational force of Ridge and Brooke's last broken promise, a force amplified exponentially by his heroic act, proving that saving her life might have inadvertently doomed his current engagement, pulling him inexorably back towards the very storm he thought he'd navigated away from years ago. The broken engagement, in this intricate dance, isn't the finale. It's the first act of the inevitable reunion, a painful prelude setting the stage for the exes to be thrust back together, compelled by fate, history, and their own unresolved hearts to confront the love they tried, and failed, to leave behind. Brooke's living room, usually a stage for passionate declarations or tearful pleas, crackled with a different energy now, the volatile, crystalline tension of an illusion irrevocably shattered. Ridge Forrester stood frozen, his carefully curated facade of charm and confident control dissolving like mist under a scorching sun, replaced by the stark, ugly contours of his own duplicity finally laid bare. Mere moments ago, he'd still been weaving his intricate tapestry of justifications, his voice a silken thread attempting to stitch together the irreparably torn fabric of his relationships with the two women who had defined his tumultuous existence. He'd spun tales of misunderstood intentions, of love so vast it couldn't be confined, of a unique connection with each that somehow excused the perpetual betrayal of the other. He spoke of Brooke's fiery spirit, the enduring foundation of their epic, chaotic love story, the mother of his children, the home he always returned to despite himself. Then, in the same breath, he invoked Taylor's serene strength, her unwavering loyalty, her intellectual depth, the healing sanctuary she represented, the safe harbor after Brooke's storms. His words were practiced, almost hypnotic, designed to appeal to the deepest vulnerabilities and cherished memories each woman held, a desperate gambit to maintain his precarious foothold in both their hearts and lives, to perpetuate the unsustainable fantasy where he remained the sun around which they both orbited, eternally forgiving, eternally available. But this time, the spell didn't take. This time, the carefully constructed edifice of Ridge Forrester, master manipulator, prince of Forrester creations, and serial emotional acrobat, met not with yielding hearts or tearful acquiescence, but with a united, impenetrable wall of weary, furious clarity. "We won't let you fool us anymore." The words, exploding from Brooke's lips like shrapnel, weren't just hers, they were a primal scream echoing the collective exhaustion of decades, a dam bursting under the relentless pressure of his self-serving gymnastics. It was a declaration of war against his carefully nurtured narrative, a refusal to be complicit in their own heartbreak any longer. The phrase hung in the charged atmosphere, heavy and final, a guillotine blade dropping on his reign of emotional chaos. It wasn't merely anger, it was emancipation. The scales, weighted for so long by his charisma and their own lingering hopes, crashed down with the brutal force of undeniable truth. The impact of Brooke's roar, that unified rejection, hit Ridge like a physical blow. His jaw clenched, the muscle leaping beneath the skin, a tic betraying the panic surging beneath his carefully maintained composure. His eyes, usually so confident, so commanding, darted between them, searching Brooke's face, now a mask of hardened fury, eyes blazing with the cold fire of utter disillusionment, then flicking to Taylor. And it was the sight of Taylor that truly unraveled him. The color drained from her face, leaving her complexion ashen, almost translucent under the harsh overhead light that suddenly seemed cruel rather than illuminating. Her posture, usually so composed, so regally still, seemed to collapse inwards, not in the dramatic swoon of old, but in a slow, agonizing crumpling of the spirit. Her breath hitched, a ragged, broken sound that echoed louder than any sob in the sudden, suffocating silence that followed Brooke's pronouncement. It wasn't the loud, messy grief of their younger years, this was the silent, devastating implosion of a fundamental truth collapsing. The quiet dignity she always carried seemed to fracture, replaced by a raw, naked vulnerability that was infinitely more painful to witness. Her eyes, wide and shimmering with unshed tears, weren't just looking at Ridge, they were seeing through him. Decades of shared history, the tender moments of rebuilding after loss, the quiet support through professional battles, the warmth of family dinners, the whispered promises of a future finally secured, flashed before her, but now each memory was overlaid with the sickening realization of his parallel life with Brooke. The late-night business meetings, the sudden unavailability, the subtle emotional withdrawals that she'd blamed on stress or work, the gentle reassurances that felt hollow in retrospect. It wasn't just this latest betrayal, it was the cumulative weight of a lifetime of being the other woman, the safe choice, the consolation prize, the one he returned to when Brooke's world proved too tempestuous, only to inevitably be drawn back into Brooke's orbit, leaving Taylor perpetually waiting in the wings of her own life. The love she felt, profound and enduring, warred violently with the humiliation of realizing how deeply she'd been played, how willingly she'd suspended disbelief, how completely her trust had been weaponized against her. The image of him whispering similar endearments, making similar promises, to Brooke, perhaps in this very room, while wearing the ring she cherished, it was an acid etching into her soul. The final, devastating piece of the puzzle clicked into place. His true face wasn't the passionate hero or the repentant lover he presented in intimate moments. It was the face of entitlement, of believing he could forever dictate the terms of their love, forever evade true accountability, forever keep them both dancing to his tune, dangling on the hook of his need. The mask wasn't just off, it was revealed to have been a cruel illusion all along, painted over a core of profound selfishness. The realization wasn't anger first, it was a profound, soul-crushing grief for the man she thought she loved, the future she thought they had built, the trust she thought was unbreakable. That grief manifested in the silent trembling of her hands, the desperate press of her lips to hold back the wail threatening to escape, and the tears that finally overflowed, tracing hot, shame-filled paths down her cheeks, not just tears of sadness, but of utter, humiliating disillusionment. Her gaze, blurred by tears yet terrifyingly clear in its judgment, remained locked on Ridge. The silence stretched, thick with the unsaid, the broken, the irreparable. Then, with a deliberate slowness that was more devastating than any hurried gesture, Taylor's trembling hand rose. Her fingers, usually so steady as they held a scalpel or offered comfort, fumbled for a moment against the cool platinum and glittering diamond adorning her left ring finger, the symbol Ridge had placed there with such ceremony, such earnest promises of forever, a new beginning after so much pain. That ring, once a radiant emblem of hope, of hard-won commitment, of a love finally victorious after decades of turmoil, now felt like a searing brand, a mocking reminder of her own gullibility. Each facet of the diamond seemed to catch the light and throw back a distorted reflection of Ridge's lies, Brooke's pain, her own shattered dreams. The weight of it was suddenly unbearable, a physical manifestation of the chains of his deceit. Her breath hitched again, a ragged sob catching in her throat as she fought for control, not for his sake, but for her own crumbling dignity. With a final, shuddering inhale that seemed to draw strength from the very core of her being, she grasped the ring. The slide off her finger wasn't smooth, it caught for a heartbreaking second, as if even the metal resisted severing this last tangible connection, before yielding. Holding it between her thumb and forefinger, she stared at it, the diamond's brilliance a cruel counterpoint to the desolation in her eyes. It wasn't just a piece of jewelry, it was the physical manifestation of a future incinerated, a promise turned to ash. The tears fell freely now, silent rivers carving paths through her anguish, but her jaw was set, her posture straightening fractionally with a resolve born of utter despair. Her eyes, swimming yet piercing, finally lifted from the ring to meet Ridge's. In that gaze was a universe of pain, the shattered trust of a confidant, the betrayed love of a wife, in spirit if not always on paper, the humiliation of a woman who realized she'd been a convenient placeholder in a story where she was never truly the sole protagonist. There was no accusation shouted, no dramatic monologue. The silence was her indictment, more powerful than any words. Then, with a movement devoid of flourish but heavy with finality, her arm extended. Her hand, holding the ring like something contaminated, hovered in the charged space between them. Her voice, when it finally came, was a raw whisper, scraped from the depths of her wounded soul, trembling with unshed sobs yet carrying an undeniable, irrevocable weight. I can't. I won't do this anymore. Not with this man. The ring, catching the light one last time, seemed to hang suspended for an eternal moment, a tiny, glittering symbol of everything offered and everything irrevocably broken, before she let it go. It didn't clatter dramatically, it simply fell, a small, cold, metallic punctuation mark landing with a soft, definitive tink on the polished surface of the coffee table. The sound was absurdly small in the vast silence it created, yet it echoed like a gunshot through the ruins of their relationships. That tiny sound wasn't just the ring hitting the table, it was the sound of Taylor Hayes reclaiming her soul, piece by agonizing piece, from the man who had gambled at one too many times. It was the sound of a line drawn in the sand of her self-respect, a boundary finally enforced with the currency of her own shattered heart. The ring, lying there cold and inert, was no longer a promise, it was merely evidence. And Ridge Forrester, the man who had always found a way back, always spun the narrative, always held the power, stood utterly exposed, utterly defeated, watching the two cornerstones of his chaotic emotional world finally, irrevocably, turn to dust in his hands, victims not of fate, but of his own unvarnished, undeniable true face. The reign of the prince was over, dethroned not by an external foe, but by the united, clear-eyed refusal of the queens he had spent a lifetime trying, and ultimately failing, to simultaneously possess. The silence that followed was the birth cry of their freedom and the death rattle of his delusion.